Well, the White House has said that it's willing to bypass Congress and use executive orders. In fact, they talked about 19 of them yesterday to enact new gun control laws. But can President Obama really do that while keeping in line with the Second Amendment?
Our very own Fox News senior judicial analyst Judge Andrew Napolitano challenged that idea, standing with the Constitution, a stance that found him squaring off with the New York Times.
Surprise.
Oh, they're coming after you. Now,
I was surprised when I got up Saturday morning. I knew something had happened because the number of emails vastly exceeded what they normally are at 7 o'clock on a Saturday morning saying, look at the New York Times, look at the New York Times, they're going after you.
Let's see what they said. This is what you said that got them going.
Here's the dirty little secret about the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment was not written in order to protect your right to shoot deer. It was written to protect your right to shoot tyrants if they take over the government.
Okay, so in response...
That was just a little blurb in the D.C. Bureau for Greta Wire. You know, our colleague Greta Van Susteren has her producer walk around the bureau saying, hey, Eric, you want to say anything for Greta tonight? They found me, and that's what I said. But it was the subject of a piece that I had written for FoxNews.com and the Washington Times that day, last Thursday.
Okay, so explain that then.
Second Amendment was not written to protect the rights of hunters because the people who wrote it already assumed that everybody had the right to hunt because that's the way a lot of them gathered food for their families and for their businesses. But they had just finished fighting a revolution against a tyrant, King George III, and the mightiest army and navy known to the world at the time, that of Great Britain. And the only way they were able to do that was because they had the arms and armaments with which to fight the tyrant. So to make sure that the new government here would not do the same thing to the Americans here that the British had done to the colonists, they made certain that the government would not interfere with our right to protect ourselves. It's another one of those checks and balances. Before somebody in the White House got crazy ideas about taking people's rights, that person had to think twice. These people are not going to go quietly, and they have the means with which to resist. That's the whole purpose behind the Second Amendment. When you hear a politician saying it's for hunting, that's code for, I don't believe in the Second Amendment.
Okay. So the New York Times heard that little clip. It's amazing what they watch, right?
Yes.
And here was the quote that one of their columnists had about you. These extremists, I guess they're talking about you, Judge, make sensible, reasonable gun control hard to discuss, let alone achieve in this country, because they skew the conversations away from common sense solutions on which both rational gun owners and non-gun owners can agree. How do you respond?
Well, look, either we have a Second Amendment or we don't. The whole purpose of the Constitution was to preserve individual rights, whether it's speech, travel, privacy, or self-defense, from the overwhelming passion of the public. Right now, the public is passionate about this because we are still grieving over the horrific massacre, something none of us ever thought we'd see in our lives, that took place in Newtown. So the question is, should law-abiding citizens lose a fundamental liberty because of what some crazies among us have done? We have almost always answered that question, no. We look out for and prosecute the crazies. We don't take the rights away from those who don't abuse them.
And Judge, they took it one step further, the Founding Fathers did when they wrote that Second Amendment. They said the rights shall not, to keep and bear arms, shall not be infringed upon. Takes it one step further, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, Eric, and I appreciate you mentioning that. It's really one of the clearest parts of the entire Constitution. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, meaning the government shall not, may not interfere with this. The Supreme Court has said, in your own home, in your backyard, on your property, you have an absolute right to have a weapon.
But real quickly, because we started the segment saying that the president talked about possibly 19 executive orders, people have disagreed with me on this show that he has the ability to do that, but now they're saying 19 executive orders. What can he do?
Well, we need to see them. We need to see exactly what he's going to do.
They would probably be limited in scope.
Well, technically, theoretically, if it's done according to law, an executive order regulates the federal government's administration of the law. So it can't target any individual. It can target the way the feds administer the law. So he could say to the DEA, I want you to start harassing gun dealers, make it more difficult for them to import or to transport guns. One of the worst things he might do that's being discussed is he could say to the EPA, the Environmental Protection Administration, there's lead in bullets. let's start charging people more for the bullets because lead impairs the atmosphere. They actually tried that in Chicago, and it was defeated. So once we see that list, we'll know whether or not the president and this administration are faithful to their oaths, their solemn oaths to uphold the Constitution, which includes the Second Amendment.
All right. Judge Andrew Napolitano, who is now in a tiff with the Times. Judge, thank you very much for
Pleasure,
dropping
guys.
by.